She was invisible to him. Just another poor waitress, serving his coffee. So when this billionaire insulted her in Chinese, calling her worthless, stupid, good for nothing but looking pretty, he had no idea she understood every single word. What happened next? She destroyed him in under 60 seconds with one perfect sentence that made his face turn white as snow. And by the end of the story, you'll see how this minimum wage worker became richer than she ever dreamed, while the man who mocked her learned the most expensive lesson of his life. This is a true story about the moment when the invisible became unforgettable. Stay with me, because what she said will give you chills. Welcome to the story room. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. You know, there are moments in life when you feel completely invisible. Like you're just another face in the crowd, another pair of hands doing a job, another person nobody really sees. That's exactly how Emma felt every single day of her life. Let me tell you about Emma. She was 23 years old, working at a fancy cafe in downtown Seattle called the Grand Brew. This wasn't your regular coffee shop. No. This was the kind of place where tech millionaires and business executives came to have their meetings. The kind of place where a simple cup of coffee cost $12 and people didn't even blink at the price. Emma would wake up every morning in her small studio apartment on the edge of the city. The kind of place where the walls were thin, the plumbing made strange noises, and winter meant wearing 2 sweaters inside because the heating barely worked. She'd put on her white shirt and black apron, pull her blonde hair into a ponytail, and take the bus into the city. 45 minutes each way, standing most of the time, because the bus was always crowded. But here's what nobody knew about Emma. Behind that coffee-stained apron and tired smile was a brilliant mind. When she wasn't serving overpriced lattes to people who never looked her in the eye, Emma was a student at Seattle University. She studied languages. Not just 1 or 2, but 5 different languages. She could speak German like she grew up in Berlin. She could speak Italian like she was born in Rome. And her Mandarin Chinese? It was absolutely perfect. Emma had spent 8 months in Beijing on a student exchange program. She lived with a local family, studied at one of China's top universities, and fell completely in love with everything about the language and culture. The way the tones could change the entire meaning of a word. The beautiful characters that looked like art on paper. The deep respect woven into every conversation. She wrote her whole university thesis about it. But none of that mattered at the Grand Brew. There, she was just the girl who made coffee. Just another server in a black apron. Her boss, Mr. Williams, was a nervous man who worried about everything. He'd panic if a table wasn't cleaned fast enough or if someone's order took 30 seconds too long. And when he panicked, he'd take it out on whoever was nearby. Emma learned quickly to stay quiet and do her job. Then there was Jessica. Jessica had worked at the cafe for 7 years and acted like she owned the place. She had cold eyes that noticed everything and a fake smile that never felt real. From Emma's first day, Jessica saw her as competition. Emma was younger, faster, and customers seemed to genuinely like her warmth. Jessica hated that. So Jessica made Emma's life miserable in small, mean ways. She'd assign Emma the most difficult customers. She'd forget to tell Emma when orders were ready, making her look slow. She'd whisper to other staff members, spreading rumors. Nothing Emma could directly complain about, but enough to make every shift feel like torture. Emma endured it all because she had no choice. This job paid for her school fees, her rent, her food. She was so close to graduating, so close to a better life. She just had to survive a little longer. On this particular Wednesday afternoon, something was different. Emma could feel it the moment she walked in for her shift. Mr. Williams was sweating more than usual, his hands shaking as he arranged cups. The other staff members were whispering urgently. "What's happening?" Emma asked one of the baristas. "You haven't heard?" he said, eyes wide with excitement and fear. "David Zhang is coming here today. Right here. To our cafe." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Everyone knew that name. David Zhang was a Chinese tech entrepreneur, one of the richest men in the world. He'd built a technology empire that stretched across every continent. His company made everything from smartphones to artificial intelligence systems. Forbes called him one of the most powerful people on the planet. But he was also famous for something else: his temper. The business magazines loved writing about how he destroyed competitors, fired executives in the middle of meetings, and had zero patience for anyone he considered beneath him. They called him the Dragon because of his fierce reputation and his ability to burn anyone who crossed him. Mr. Williams gathered everyone in the back room. His face was red, his voice shaking. "Listen carefully," he said. "Mr. Zhang has reserved our private corner table for this afternoon. This is the biggest thing that's ever happened to this cafe. Everything must be absolutely, completely perfect. Do you understand me? Perfect." Everyone nodded silently. Then Mr. Williams looked directly at Emma. "Emma, you'll be serving his table." Emma felt her stomach drop. She glanced at Jessica, who was smirking with her arms crossed. This was a setup. Either Emma would fail in front of everyone, or she'd somehow succeed, and Jessica would find another way to punish her for it. "Sir, maybe someone with more experience should." Emma started. "I've made my decision." Mr. Williams cut her off. "Don't let me down, Emma." As Emma tied her apron tighter and took a deep breath, she had no idea that the next few hours would change everything. That her secret knowledge, the language skills she'd worked so hard to learn, would become the key to the most important moment of her entire life. The clock on the wall showed 2:45 p.m. In 15 minutes, everything would change. The storm was about to arrive. At exactly 3 o'clock, the front door of the Grand Brew opened, and David Zhang walked in. The entire cafe went quiet. I mean, completely silent. You could hear the espresso machine hissing in the background, but every conversation stopped. Every head turned. He was a man in his mid-50s, average height, but carrying himself like he was 7 feet tall. His charcoal gray suit probably cost more than Emma made in 6 months. His black hair was perfectly styled, with just a touch of silver at the sides. But it was his face that really caught your attention. Sharp features, a jaw set in permanent disapproval, and eyes that looked at everything around him like it was slightly disappointing. He wasn't alone. 2 younger men walked beside him, both Chinese, both wearing expensive suits that still somehow looked cheap compared to their bosses. They looked tense, their shoulders tight, their smiles nervous. These were junior executives from his company, Emma realized. Men who'd learned that working close to David Zhang was both an amazing opportunity and a daily test of survival. Mr. Williams practically ran to the door, bowing so deeply Emma thought he might fall over. "Mr. Zhang, what an incredible honor. Welcome. Welcome to the Grand Brew." Zhang's cold gaze swept over the manager like he was looking at dirt on his shoe. He didn't offer a handshake. He didn't smile. He just said in heavily accented English, "My table." It wasn't a question. It was an order. Of course, of course. Right this way, sir." Mr. Williams gestured frantically toward the corner table, leading the group across the cafe. Other customers stared. Some pulled out their phones, probably texting their friends that they were in the same room as David Zhang. Everyone recognized him. Emma watched them approach, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She'd served difficult customers before. Rude businessmen, entitled celebrities, people who treated service workers like furniture. But this felt different. There was something about Zhang's presence that made the whole room feel colder. As Mr. Williams seated them, he gestured toward Emma with a flourish. "And this is Emma, Mr. Zhang. She'll be taking care of you this afternoon. She's one of our very best." Emma stepped forward, her professional smile fixed in place. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome to the Grand Brew." Zhang's eyes flicked toward her for maybe half a second. In that brief moment, Emma felt herself being looked at, judged, and dismissed. She might as well have been a plant in the corner. His 2 associates didn't even glance at her. She handed them the menus. Zhang took his without any acknowledgement that she was even a person standing there. And so it began. From the very first moment, David Zhang was impossible to please. He studied the menu with a deep frown, then asked Emma technical questions about the coffee beans that were clearly designed to trip her up. Where were they from? What altitude were they grown at? What roasting method was used? But Emma had worked in coffee shops for 4 years. She knew her coffee. She answered each question calmly and correctly. She could see a flash of annoyance in his eyes when she got every answer right. He ordered a cappuccino. When she brought it out, perfectly crafted with beautiful foam art, he took one sip and pushed it away. Too bitter, he said flatly. Make another one. Of course, sir. I'll ask our barista to adjust it immediately. The second cappuccino came out. He drank it in silence, but his expression made it clear he still wasn't impressed. His two associates, watching his every reaction, quickly agreed with everything he implied. Yes, not quite right, one of them murmured. Could be better, the other added. As the afternoon went on, Zhang found fault with everything. The music was too loud. The temperature was too cold. The chair was uncomfortable. Each complaint was delivered in that same flat, cold tone, never raising his voice, which somehow made it worse. Emma handled each issue with grace, apologizing sincerely, fixing what could be fixed, enduring what couldn't be. Across the cafe, Jessica was watching with barely hidden delight. Every time Emma had to go back to the kitchen with a complaint, Jessica would smirk and whisper to the other servers. Then came the moment that changed everything. Emma was refilling their water glasses. She moved carefully, her movements practiced and precise. But at that exact second, one of the executives gestured dramatically while talking, trying to agree with something his boss had said. His hand knocked against the table, making it shake just slightly. It was the tiniest movement, but it was enough. A single drop of water from Emma's pitcher fell through the air in what felt like slow motion and landed on the sleeve of David Zhang's perfect gray suit jacket. Time stopped. Zhang froze, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. Slowly, so slowly, he lowered it back to the saucer. He stared down at the tiny dark spot on his sleeve. A spot so small most people wouldn't even notice it. But to him, it might as well have been a huge stain. I am so sorry, sir, Emma said immediately, reaching for a napkin. Please let me. Zhang held up one hand, stopping her mid-sentence. He didn't look at her. He just stared at that tiny spot on his sleeve, his jaw tightening. Then, still not looking at Emma, believing she was just another ignorant American server who couldn't understand anything beyond English, David Zhang turned to his two associates and began speaking in rapid Mandarin Chinese. And what he said was absolutely devastating. The Chinese words flowed from David Zhang's mouth like poison. Smooth and casual, like he was discussing the weather. He wasn't shouting. He didn't need to. The contempt in his voice was enough. If you translated what he said into English, it would sound like this. Look at this clumsy girl. They hire these servers based on appearance and call it service. She probably barely graduated high school. All she's good for is carrying coffee and looking pleasant. Completely worthless. His two executives immediately laughed. Nervous, eager to please laughs. They were performing for their boss, showing him they agreed, that they were on his side. They looked at Emma with pity and contempt, comfortable in their secret language, confident that she had no idea what had just been said about her. But they were wrong. Emma understood every single word. Every hateful syllable landed in her mind with perfect clarity. The formal Chinese structure, the specific words he'd chosen to demean her, the casual cruelty of a powerful man who thought himself untouchable. She understood not just the words, but the deep disrespect behind them, the way he'd reduced her to nothing more than a decoration. An object without thoughts or feelings. For a long moment, Emma just stood there, the water pitcher still in her hand. To everyone watching, Mr. Williams hovering nearby, Jessica watching from across the room, other customers trying not to stare, it just looked like a server standing quietly while customers spoke in a foreign language. But inside Emma, something was breaking. Or maybe something was finally breaking free. She thought about every time someone had looked through her like she wasn't there. Every condescending comment from Jessica. Every moment she'd had to smile and nod while being treated as less than human. Every shift where her aching feet and exhausted mind were just the price she paid to chase her dreams. She thought about the 8 months she'd spent in Beijing, living with the Qin family who'd welcomed her like a daughter. learning not just the language but the culture, the respect, the deep appreciation for courtesy and dignity that was woven into every interaction. She'd fallen in love with China, with its beauty and depth and wisdom. And here was this man using her beloved language as a weapon, turning it into something ugly. The professional smile faded from Emma's face. Her spine straightened. It was a subtle shift, but it changed everything about her posture. She was no longer a timid server. She was a woman who'd had enough. She carefully placed the water pitcher on the side table. The two executives were still chuckling, enjoying their boss's joke. Zhang was examining his sleeve with theatrical disgust, playing up the moment. Then Emma spoke. And she spoke in perfect, flawless Mandarin Chinese. Her accent was Beijing standard, the kind you'd hear from a university professor or a news broadcaster. Every word was precisely chosen, grammatically perfect, delivered with a calm, steady confidence that cut through the room like a knife. In English, what she said was this: "Sir, your assumption that my profession reflects my intelligence is as flawed as your understanding of basic human respect. Perhaps someone of your business success should have learned by now that wisdom and worth are not determined by the job someone does, but by the character they show. Clearly, that is a lesson you have failed to learn." She paused, letting the words sink in, then continued. "And if we are discussing competence, I should point out that you used the wrong tonal inflection when addressing your colleagues earlier. For business associates of equal standing, the respectful form would be more appropriate. But then perhaps accuracy is less important to you than the sound of your own voice." The effect was instantaneous and absolute. David Zhang's face went completely white. His mouth actually fell open. His eyes went wide with shock. For the first time all afternoon, maybe for the first time in years, he was speechless. This was a man who commanded boardrooms full of powerful executives, who'd built a technology empire through sheer force of will, who was used to controlling every situation he entered. And a cafe server had just intellectually dismantled him in his own language. The two junior executives looked like they'd been slapped. Their faces went pale, then red, then pale again. They stared at Emma, then at their boss, then back at Emma, their minds unable to process what had just happened. They'd laughed at her. They'd been part of mocking her. And she'd understood every word. From across the cafe, Jessica's phone slipped from her fingers. She caught it just before it hit the floor, her mouth hanging open in shock. Mr. Williams, who'd been approaching the table to check on things, stopped dead in his tracks. He didn't understand Chinese, but he understood body language. He understood that something massive had just happened, that the power dynamic had just shifted in a way he couldn't comprehend. Other customers at nearby tables had stopped drinking their coffee. They sensed the tension. They watched this extraordinary moment unfold. The silence stretched out, thick and heavy. Emma stood there, her head high, her gaze steady and unwavering. She'd said what needed to be said. She'd defended her dignity in the language of the man who'd tried to steal it from her. Zhang's shock was slowly transforming into something else. The color was returning to his face, but it wasn't the pale coldness from before. There was a flush creeping up his neck, a mixture of embarrassment and something that looked almost like respect. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, uncertain. He spoke in Chinese, the language of their confrontation. "Who are you?" he asked. It was a simple question, in any language. But this time it wasn't dismissive. It was genuine. He was truly asking, who is this person who just shattered everything I assumed about the world? Emma met David Zhang's gaze, without flinching. She responded in the same flawless Mandarin, her voice calm and measured. "My name is Emma. I am your server this afternoon." The simplicity of her answer was powerful. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't backing down. She was stating a fact, claiming her identity, refusing to let him define her by his expectations. Zhang leaned back in his chair, studying her with completely new eyes. The arrogance was gone, replaced by intense curiosity. "That is not what I asked," he said, still in Chinese. "Where did you learn to speak like this?" Emma took a quiet breath before answering. I spent 8 months in Beijing on a full academic scholarship, studying at Tsinghua University. I lived with a host family in the Chaoyang district. My research focused on the social linguistics of respectful speech patterns in modern Mandarin. She watched his face as she spoke. Tsinghua University was one of China's most prestigious institutions. The detail about respectful speech was pointed. She was reminding him that she'd noticed his mistake, that she wasn't just fluent, she was educated in the deep structures of his language. Zhang's expression shifted again. There was something in his eyes now that looked almost like pain. Shame, perhaps. Or the uncomfortable recognition of his own cruelty being reflected back at him. One of his executives, the younger one, cleared his throat and tried to smooth things over, speaking in Chinese. Sir, perhaps we should just continue with the— Be quiet, Zhang snapped, cutting him off. Then he said something that made the young man's face burn with humiliation. You laugh like a fool at my joke. You are just as guilty of disrespect as I am. Perhaps more, because you should have known better. The executive shrank back in his seat, thoroughly ashamed. The other associate stared down at his coffee cup, clearly wishing he could disappear. Mr. Williams, unable to stand the confusion any longer, hurried over. Is everything all right, Emma? If there's a problem, I can. Everything is fine, Mr. Williams, Emma said quietly, switching back to English. We were just discussing the menu. But Williams could see it wasn't fine. The whole atmosphere had changed. He looked between Emma and Zhang, completely lost. Perhaps I should assign another server too. No, Zhang said sharply in English, his accent heavy. She stays. Williams backed away, confused and frightened, leaving them in their strange standoff. Zhang continued to study Emma, and she could see his mind working, calculating. He was a businessman above all else. He recognized value when he saw it, even when it came in an unexpected package. He gestured to the empty chair at the table. Sit down, he said in English. Emma shook her head. I'm working, sir. I can't. I am making it a business meeting, he interrupted. Sit, please. That last word, please, seemed to cost him something. It wasn't a word he used often. Emma hesitated. This was completely against cafe policy. But something in his tone had changed. The coldness was still there, but there was also genuine interest. And perhaps the beginning of something like respect. She sat down, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Across the cafe, she could feel Jessica's furious stare burning into her back. Zhang switched back to Mandarin, speaking more carefully now, more respectfully. My company is expanding globally. We are developing new technologies, working with international teams, negotiating with governments and businesses around the world. It is complicated work. Cultural differences cause problems. Misunderstandings cost millions of dollars and months of time. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I have translators. I have many translators. But they translate words only. They do not translate meaning. They do not understand the space between what people say and what they actually mean. Emma listened, beginning to understand where this was going. I need someone who can do more than translate, Zhang continued. Someone who understands culture deeply. Someone who can tell me when an American partner says, "We'll think about it," but really means absolutely not. Someone who can help my Chinese team understand why their direct communication style offends Westerners. Someone who can bridge the gap. He looked directly at her. Someone like you. Then he switched to English, perhaps to make sure there was no misunderstanding. I am offering you a position with my company. You would work with my international relations team. 6 months in Seattle, then 6 months in Shanghai. The salary would be $85,000 per year, plus housing and travel expenses. Emma felt the air leave her lungs. $85,000. That was more money than she'd ever imagined earning, especially straight out of university. It was freedom from debt, from struggling, from counting every penny. It was the kind of opportunity people dreamed about. But it was being offered by the man who, just minutes ago, had called her worthless and stupid. Why? She asked simply in Chinese. Why would you offer this to me after what you said? For the first time, Zhang looked uncomfortable. He glanced down at his hands, then back at her. When he spoke, his voice was quieter, less certain. Because you did something no one in my company does. You told me the truth. You showed me my mistake. Everyone who works for me is afraid. They tell me what I want to hear. They laugh at my jokes even when they are not funny. They never challenge me. He gestured to his two associates, who were staring at their coffee cups. Look at them. They will go back to the office and tell everyone how brilliant I was today. They will never mention that I made a fool of myself. This is how empires fall, when no one tells the emperor he is wrong. He leaned forward slightly. You are not afraid of me. That is rare. That is valuable. More valuable than 100 people who just agree with everything I say. Emma sat there in that expensive cafe, her heart racing, her mind spinning with possibilities and doubts. $85,000. A real career. The chance to use everything she'd learned, everything she'd worked so hard for. But at what cost? I need time to think about this, Emma said quietly in English. Zhang nodded slowly. There was respect in that nod. He'd expected her to jump at the offer, and the fact that she hadn't impressed him even more. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, sleek, minimal, expensive. He wrote something on the back. Come to my office tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. This is the address. We will discuss the details. He paused, then added, and Emma, do not be late. With that, he stood up. His two associates scrambled to their feet as well, eager to escape. Zhang pulled out his wallet and placed several $100 bills on the table, far more than enough to cover their coffee and a generous tip. He looked at Emma one last time, and there might have been the ghost of a smile at the corner of his mouth. Then he was gone, striding out of the cafe, with his entourage trailing behind him. Emma sat there for a moment longer, the business card heavy in her hand. The cafe was completely silent. Every eye was on her. Mr. Williams rushed over, his face purple with confusion and anger. Emma, what on earth was that about? You sat at a customer's table. You. I quit, Emma said simply, standing up. The words came out before she'd even fully decided to say them. But once they were out, she knew they were right. I'm giving you my notice, effective immediately. Williams sputtered. You can't just. But Emma was already walking away, heading toward the back room to collect her things. Behind her, she could hear Jessica's voice, sharp and venomous. She probably did something inappropriate. That's the only way someone like her could. Emma didn't turn around. She didn't need to. Let Jessica think what she wanted. None of it mattered anymore. That night, Emma barely slept. She lay in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling, the business card on her nightstand. Could she work for him? For a man who'd said such terrible things about her? Would accepting his offer mean accepting that his behavior was okay? Would she be betraying herself, selling out for money? But another voice in her head argued back. The money wasn't just for her. It would help her mom, who'd worked 2 jobs for years to help Emma get through school. It would mean Emma could finally pay off her student loans. It would mean security, opportunity, a real future. And maybe, just maybe, working for Zhang wouldn't be selling out. Maybe it would be something else entirely. Maybe she could be a voice of honesty in his world of yes men. Maybe she could help him see people differently, treat people better. Maybe she could make a real difference. As dawn broke over Seattle, Emma made her decision. She showered, dressed in the most professional outfit she owned, a simple gray dress and blazer she'd bought secondhand, and made her way across the city. Zhang Technologies' headquarters was a tower of glass and steel in downtown Seattle. Impressive and intimidating. Emma walked through the gleaming lobby, gave her name to the receptionist, and was whisked up to the top floor in an elevator that moved so fast her ears popped. Zhang's office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. He was standing by the window when she entered, his back to her. He didn't turn around immediately. You came, he said in Chinese. I did, Emma replied in the same language. But I have conditions. Now he turned, one eyebrow raised. Conditions? Emma stood tall, channeling every bit of courage she had. First, I will never accept being spoken to disrespectfully. Not in English, not in Chinese, not in any language. I'm happy to receive professional feedback, but I will not tolerate being demeaned. Zhang's face was unreadable. She continued. Second, I'm finishing my degree. I need some flexibility in my schedule for the next few months to complete my coursework. My work for you won't suffer, but my education is important to me. She took a breath. And third, the housing assistance you mentioned, I'd like part of it to be used differently. I want you to create a scholarship fund for language students at Seattle University. Students who want to study abroad but can't afford it. Call it the Zhang Cultural Bridge Scholarship. She held her breath. She'd asked for the impossible, demanding respect from a man known for his harshness and asking him to spend money on something that had no business value whatsoever. The silence stretched out painfully. Then slowly, David Zhang began to smile. It was a real smile. Not the cold look from the day before, but something genuine and warm. Emma, he said in English. You are even more formidable than I thought. He walked to his desk and pulled out a folder. I accept your conditions. All of them. The scholarship is actually a good idea, good publicity for the company, and the right thing to do. He pushed the folder toward her. This is your contract. Read it carefully. Take it to a lawyer if you wish. If you're satisfied, sign it and start on Monday. Emma took the folder with shaking hands. She'd done it. She'd walked into the dragon's den and not only survived but came out with exactly what she wanted. As she turned to leave, Zhang spoke again, this time in careful, respectful Chinese. Emma, thank you. For yesterday. For showing me what I had become. I needed that lesson. Emma looked back at him and saw something she hadn't expected to see. Humility. We all need reminders sometimes, she said gently, about what really matters, about treating people with dignity. 3 years later, Emma wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. She'd helped Zhang Technologies successfully expand across 3 continents, bridging cultural gaps and preventing countless misunderstandings that could have cost millions. She'd earned the respect of everyone in the company, not because of her title, but because of her wisdom and her unwavering integrity. And the Zhang Cultural Bridge Scholarship? It had sent 15 students abroad to study languages and cultures. 15 young people who, like Emma, had the passion and intelligence but not the money. 15 futures changed. As for Zhang himself, he was still tough and demanding. But he was different too. More thoughtful. More aware of how his words affected people. He'd learned that real strength isn't about making others feel small. It's about lifting people up. Emma's story reminds us of something powerful. Your worth is not defined by your job title, your uniform, or what other people think of you. Your worth comes from who you are inside, your knowledge, your dignity, your courage to speak truth even when it's frightening. Sometimes the people who seem the most powerful are actually the most fragile. And sometimes the people who seem powerless have a strength that can change everything. One moment of courage, one perfect response at exactly the right time, can open doors you never imagined possible. Emma didn't just defend herself that day at the Grand Brew. She changed the course of her entire life. She proved that true power doesn't come from money or status. It comes from knowing your own value and refusing to let anyone diminish it. And that's a lesson worth remembering, no matter what language you speak. If this story touched your heart, remember, you are worthy of respect. Your dreams are valid. Your voice matters. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Thanks for your watching. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to the Story Room for meaningful stories that inspire and teach life lessons.